As part of its educational outreach, life-sharing volunteers are invited into high schools to present anything from single classes up to gymnasiums full of people and students. I'm one of those volunteers, and together we have reached over 11,000 students last school year.
Oh, turn it on.
So last year I went through the whole program. You may recall that we cover how students will be asked whether they want to become an organ donor when they get their license. We show a short video. We cover the organs that can save up to 8 lives and tissues that can enhance the lives of up to 50 people. We also cover both live donors and deceased donors. We share our personal experiences. You may recall, I'm a living before and after picture. My left lung is a nice, healthy steak there. My right lung is shriveled and not doing much, but that transplant was almost 5 years ago, and still on oxygen after my little setback a year ago this month. But thank you for your card and prayers and concerns. So the other thing is, at this point, over half my Sweetwater career has been because of an organ donor. So I like this slide because we all know Petco Park and SDCCU Stadium holds 113,000 people. There's just over that waiting for an organ donation in the United States. 20% live here in California. When covering the ways you can help, I emphasize tell your family and friends. As a student, as a minor, even if you say, I want to be an organ donor, your parents are going to have the last say. So be sure they know your wishes. Tell your grandparents. They may have never signed up. You're never too old. Corneas, my 88-year-old grandfather donated a cornea. So you can always go online. Don't rule yourself out and say, oh, I'm too old, I'm too sick. Let the doctors rule you out. Less than 1% of people who sign up actually become a viable donor. So we need a lot of people to sign up. And again, going online is an easy way to sign up if you haven't already. 2 years ago, we heard from Donna and Ivan, who are here tonight. A transplant recipient and an organ and Sweetwater alumni. Last year, we heard from 2 teachers. And this year, we would like you to hear directly from students. We have Clarice from Eastlake High, Catherine from Eastlake High, Carmen from Hilltop High, Destiny from Sweetwater High, and Kenya from Olympian High. So, my personal experience was 10 days in the hospital, got back out, back to work 4 months, full-time after 5 months, and enjoying life, going back to work, going camping, weddings, of course, and I got to meet, it's growing less rare now that recipients are getting to meet their donor family. When I concluded my presentation in Mrs. Bailey's class, who's here, Clarice raised her hand, and I'll just let her come up and say what happened. Come on. Let me stand on the other side of you.
Hi. Paul, can you lower?
Clarice Velasco from Eastlake, and when I was in the classroom with Paul, I wasn't really expecting anything big until he concluded his presentation, and I found out this was my family, and that's my Uncle Vic, his donor. I was born in Philippines, so I didn't get an opportunity to get really close to him, but I was really close to his mom, my grandma Loy, and they were both a very kind-hearted person, and my Uncle Vic is considered as the comedian of our family, and I just want to thank Mr. Paul Woods, obviously, because not only that I didn't get close to my Uncle Vic, but I have the honor today to speak for him, which is very close to my heart, and I am very thankful that he allowed my uncle's smiles, his kindness, and his memories be heard to many students, obviously, and expanded their knowledge, and also touched many people's heart, and he kept my uncle's memory alive, and he was doing that for many years, and he was the first recipient that I met, actually. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Also in the class was Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm in Miss Bailey's anatomy class. Before Paul came to my anatomy class to present, I knew very little, if nothing, about organ donation. I knew the option was there, but I didn't realize the tremendous impact one could make by being an organ donor until after the presentation. I don't even think I was old enough. In such a limited amount of time, I learned so much from him. For the short time I've known Paul, I've noticed that he's an incredibly kind man who now, thanks to organ donation, gets to live for many more years. The presentation itself was very well-structured and impactful. I remember sitting in class and being astonished at the endless pros that come out of donation. What really stood out to me was a single life. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now from Hilltop we have Carmen.
Hello everybody, my name is Carmen Sandoval and I'm from Hilltop High School. I'm in 9th grade, and I'd just like to share that the life sharing really impacted me because I had never met anyone who had received an organ, and I thought it was not that common because I was never educated on that topic. So to me it was a very nice experience because I got to see that there are lots of people out there in the world, in California itself, 20%, that need organs. And to me, it's very important that people are educated because I didn't know, and I could have died, and I would have never known that I could help people survive another year or more. So I think it's very impactful, and it also made me very grateful that I'm healthy, and it just made me realize that not everyone has that opportunity. And I also learned a lot that not all organs can be donated, like not everything can be salvaged. So it made me grateful that I could learn. And it also made me change my views because before I was like, I don't think I want to be an organ donor. It's kind of weird, like I'm going to die, but people are going to have my body parts. It's kind of strange. But it actually made me realize, like, that's a great thing to do. I can save people's lives, and it's kind of selfless to do. Like, I'm going to be dead. I don't need those organs anymore, like, what would I need them for? I'm gonna be dead. So it made me realize that I can make an impact on people even after I'm gone. And also, it made me realize a lot because I have an uncle. He's currently in the hospital. He's in the hospital, and he needs a double lung transplant. He's been there for 7 months, and there's been a time where they told him he was gonna have lungs in lungs at work, but then they told him that that wasn't the case, and that he's been waiting, still in the hospital, and he can't even go to his car without having to wait 5 to 10 minutes to be able to start driving. And that's very sad. And that's why these kinds of things, because without programs like life sharing, no one would know. I wouldn't know, and other students wouldn't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. From Suhai, we have Destiny.
Hi, good evening. So my name is Destiny Gutierrez, and I'm a senior at Sweetwater High School, and I'm here to represent Donate Life. So I was introduced to Donate Life my junior year of high school, so last year, in my first responder class. And for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure you guys do, but what a first responder does is they're the first person on scene to an emergency. And so basically, car accidents, to me, car accidents are the ones where, like, when I think about an organ donor, I think about car accidents and how people lose their lives and they need organs. So me taking that course was the first step to me deciding I wanted to help save lives. I am now in the Medical Assistant Academy. I have done a 9-week-long internship at Frederica Manor, and I have my heart set on a nursing career, so I know I want to save lives. So with all that being said, I want to say if I myself am a donor, so I know what you guys are thinking, this girl wants to save lives. Of course she's an organ donor, but I'm actually not. So last month I took my permit test, and I came across the part of the paperwork where it asked me if I want to be an organ donor. Unfortunately, I picked no. And I picked no because it kind of caught me off guard. You know, when you're young, you don't really think about dying. You don't think about situations like this coming up. So I stopped, I thought about it. I told my mom, hey, like, what should I do? You know, I could pick yes or I could pick no. So basically, I ended up putting no, but I stopped and I thought about it. And that's really important, you know. Most teenagers would automatically pick no, just like she was saying. I'm sorry, I forgot her name. But you know, you don't really think about it. It's weird. You're just like, I don't want my body, you know, I don't want my body living in someone else after I'm dead. That's weird. And so I think that's what most teenagers do, and then they just pick no. But me, I stopped. I thought about it. I questioned myself, you know, and I think that's really important. You can't just skip through it blindly. You need to stop, think about it. And that's what Save Life did to me. And yeah, hopefully my permit goes well, and you know, I don't crash and I need an organ, so I'll be good. In 6 months, I think I will choose to save a life. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a good reminder that the question's actually yes or not now. It's not actually no, because you can always go online later, change your mind, either way. And so our final guest, we have Kenya.
Hi everyone, I just want to say thank you for coming out and just to see everyone's presentations. My name is Kenya Benitez, and I'm a junior at Olympian High School, and I'm here today to talk about my experience. I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease at the age of 2. It was inherited as a genetic disease, and throughout my early life, I had hypertension due to my condition. I was restricted. I was on a low sodium, low potassium diet, and I wasn't able to eat as much protein as other kids. And as my kidney function began to decrease, my doctors began to look for potential donors. My weight was actually really short. It was less than a year, and my donor was my mom. Here in the picture, there to the left, in the right picture, yeah, that's her, and that's my younger sister. And I actually had a really fast recovery after my transplant. I was only there for about 6 days. I know it might seem, oh, do you think you go to the preview?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just one picture of me in the hospital, and I know it may seem that 6 days in the hospital is a long time, but it's actually pretty good in the standards of kidney transplants. And after my transplant, I didn't have any dietary restrictions. I was able to do a lot of normal stuff as other teenagers would do. And in that picture, that was before the transplant. I wasn't able to gain as much weight, and I was really underweight. But then after my transplant, I was able to gain more weight and just like normal teenagers. And I just want to thank Donate Life for helping people like myself. You know, for me, when someone donates an organ, you know, they're not just donating a part of themselves, they're donating life. It's giving someone else another chance in life, and I really think that's such a beautiful thing, like what my mom did. And I also want to thank the Sweetwater Board for giving me the chance to continue my education during my recovery through the homeschool program and the Learning Center. And I also want to thank everyone here for coming out and watching everyone's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, some amazing stories. It's just amazing how life-sharing program and organ transplantation has impacted our students' lives. As the students have said, it's not an everyday conversation. You just don't go out at lunchtime and talk about, you signed up to give your kidney? I want to thank the board once again for the resolution declaring April as Donate Life Month and allowing us to share this very important topic. Are there any questions? If not, we'll gather for a photo op.
Anybody have any questions? No? Then let's take a picture, Paul.
Let's take a picture and then we'll scoot out.
Sweetwater alumni. Right here. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Oh, better on this.
Paul, we just want to thank you for everything that you're doing impacting students and adults' lives in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, we'll now have an update from our superintendent, Dr. Janney.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. Welcome, everyone, to our live streamed board meeting. Thank you, Manny, in the back. We're glad you're here in person, or if you are viewing from YouTube. Everybody wave. There we go. Great. So I continue to be grateful for the selfless efforts of our staff in service of our students. And that means both in and out of the classroom. And a great example is a sampling of the events held on this past Saturday for students and families. I'm just going to name a few. So first of all, there was the Parent Symposium at Rancho Del Rey Middle School, where a little over 200 parents, community members, and staff were inspired by keynote speaker and author Victor Villaseñor. Attendees then were able to learn about topics from strategies for students with ADHD, to how to talk with your teenager, to navigating financial aid for college, and understanding A through G. Just want to give a big kudos and applause to the Director of State and Federal Programs, Dr. Luz Elena Perez, and her team. They put on a great day. Other than me calling Mr. Segura Nick Solis, it was a great day. Yeah, it was a great day. Then the 19th annual Math Field Day occurred with almost all of our middle schools represented. There were 14 different events where students collaborated and competed against each other. I want to thank the teachers and the staff who organized and facilitated the event, from Rob Davis, who's been doing it for the full 19 years. He's a teacher at Montgomery Middle. Daniel Crook, one of our math TOSAs. Melissa O'Donohue, one of our math TOSAs. Mimi Williams, another math TOSA. Joette Fredrickson from the College and Career Readiness Office, clerical staff. And then we have coaches from each of the schools. Vicki Bauer from Bonita Middle, Kathy Morgan, Castle Park Middle, Taffy Tom, Chula Middle, Kurt Ewell, Eastlake Middle, Sarah Mancero, Granger, Robert Holguin, Mar Vista Academy, Lorena Perez, Montgomery Middle, Jay Jones, National City Middle, Laura Charles, Rancho Del Rey, and Ray Tornero, Southwest Middle. It was another great event, 19 years in running. And then, over at Mar Vista High School's pool, there was the inaugural middle school underwater robotics competition. So we've seen the robotics on land, but this is the same concept, but underwater. It was really, really very cool. One of our teachers at Mar Vista Academy, Alicia Jo Hall, organized the event. And she did that because next weekend, the winners of this event now get to go to the county-wide event. And so she was trying to give people an opportunity to practice, because I would go around and ask the team, so how did you practice, you know? And they said, well, we'd get a big trash can and put the water. So, I mean, it was a great opportunity for the kids, and it was very cool. And Dr. Winters had fun wearing the headset for the drone. He was really having a good time there. It was really a lot of fun. So we want to thank them. Approximately 6 of our middle schools participated, about 70 students and all their coaches. And then also at Southwest High School were the Unified Soccer Games, a tournament for both some of our high schools and our middle schools. And we want to thank TOSA Valerie Reese for inspiring so much participation and excitement about Unified Games. There was also a NIMSY student study session with almost all of our high schools gearing up for the advanced placement exams coming up here in early May. And then there was also the Middle School Athletics League, both boys and girls volleyball, and many, 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 many other individual school activities, too many to mention. But it's just a sampling of what happens every weekend in this district. And we really do have some amazing staff who really care a lot. And it's, if you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're a staff member and you get to go to any of these events, you know, sort of like what we heard right here, it's kind of a tear-jerking moment sometimes. So I just wanted to share that with you. My actual message tonight, though, it relates to one of our new adopted belief statements. And that belief statement says this: we believe in a welcoming community that is inclusive, equitable, and promotes positive academic, social, and emotional well-being. So that's one of our belief statements, right? So here's what that relates to. Last week, on April 4th, was the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. For me, it was a reminder of, am I doing enough? Not am I thinking enough, but am I doing enough to make a difference? And what was his lasting message to you or me that is meaningful even today? And how will his memory inspire us to take action to make that difference? So I want to share a few things about Dr. King that you may or may not know, but I think it's important to remember. His nonviolent philosophy pushed insistently towards the goal of universal freedom and equality. I don't know if you knew this, I just learned this. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial that was dedicated in 2011 honors him as a man of conscience. It's the freedom movement of which he was a beacon, and his message of freedom, equality, and justice and love. But what was something I didn't know was that it's the first memorial on the National Mall devoted not to a U.S. president or war hero, but to a citizen activist for civil rights and peace. I'm not sure if anybody knew that. I didn't know that. So if you did, good for you. As we know, he was a leader in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s and the Crusade for Voting Rights Act in 1965, and the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, where he gave his most popular, or one of his most popular, I Have a Dream speech. That's just to name a few. At the time he did win the Nobel Peace Prize, he was the youngest ever recipient at age 35. Age 35. And his quote that I really like says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And it's this warning, I think, that we take seriously in Sweetwater, that we're looking deeply into how our thinking influences our actions and outcomes for our students. And so how are we taking action and not just talking or thinking? I just want to give you a few examples. We're encouraging our students to become active and engaged participants in democracy by observing high school voter education weeks. And that's coming up this month, April 16th to 27th, where we can get as many 18-year-olds to register to vote or even 16-year-olds to pre-register to vote. We're also working to join a global conversation around gender equity on April 26th as a district for the second annual 50-50 Day. That's about how we are going to get a more gender-balanced world that is better for everyone. And that we hope the entire Sweetwater community will join us in taking action to help continue Dr. King's message of freedom, equality, justice, and love. So I continue to thank you for the opportunity to serve and support each of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Janning. And now we'll have a report from our student board representative, Isaiah Irizarry.
Thank you, Vice President Pike. I just want to say I apologize for being about 10 minutes late. I got stuck in traffic. But so Dr. Janney actually stole my thunder a bit, because one thing that I did want to talk about was the importance of voter registration within our high schools. And one thing that was really alarming is that when researching voter turnout rates in the last two elections, we found that in 2016, which was a presidential election year, the voter turnout was just above 55%. Which means that the president was essentially elected with 25% of the people's votes. And in the 2014 election to Congress, it was around 34%, which is really appalling for a country that's supposed to be a democracy when you only have like a slight minority of people essentially deciding what's in our government because people aren't voting. And those numbers are far, far worse amongst the young. That's why I think it's especially important. I do celebrate that we have voter registration and pre-registration days, because a lot of the problems is people just aren't registered to vote to begin with, and they don't understand how the whole process works. And I think this is one step closer towards raising those participation numbers up and to ensure that students within Sweetwater are active members of their community, that they're going out, exercising their rights to vote, and influencing the future of this country and the leaders that they make. The second thing that I wanted to discuss was a couple of weeks ago, we went to Carlsbad High School for a debate tournament, and it was the state qualifier. And one thing that my mom noticed when she was a judge and a parent judge, and she the judge's room was in the library, and one thing I noticed that in Carlsbad High School, and this is something that I haven't seen, and I can't speak for all schools because I don't 100% know, but this is something that I haven't seen or heard of in other in Sweetwater schools, is the simple information pamphlets available to high schoolers. So some of them include Take Charge, Fighting Back Against Identity Theft, purchasing a used car, getting credit, so what you need to know about credit, and then focus on finances, preparing for the future, so essentially a lot about financial planning, as well as building a better credit report. And these pamphlets were in the library and the counseling center, and it's something that could really help a lot of high school students who are starting to enter the world of real life and who could have trouble navigating that. So I don't know if it's in all district schools. People I've talked to on other sites don't necessarily have it, but that's definitely something that we're that I'll be interested in implementing, hopefully, or that, you know, I'm wondering if the board might implement or someone might be able to implement on a more district-wide level to ensure that we have easy access to some of these resources that the students might need. I might, I'm thinking about contacting the Carlsbad School District, maybe ask how they did it, or where did they get these information from, or if they made it themselves. That way, you know, we can have these resources accessible to the students. And that's all for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arizard. Okay, next up we'll have the DLAC report. The board members all received a copy of the DLAC report. Are there any questions for the chair? Where is the chair? Is the chair here right now? No? Okay, did we have any questions?
I just have a comment, sir.
Go ahead.
I would just like to thank, I think it's Mrs. Ornelas. Is that who the chair is? Sorry if I'm wrong, but I really appreciate the report that she wrote. It's really well done, stating what the presentations that they recently had, the number of parents attending the meetings at the different schools, and what they're monitoring and what they're working on with the DLAC. So I just wanted to comment that was really well done, and I appreciate the fine work she's doing.
Thank you. Frank, did you have anything?
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Segura said, I really like the section where there's the school representatives give their site ELAC reports. So like that we have a kind of an overall picture of what's going on at the other schools, which is also very good. I think we've all commented that the quality of the reports have improved tremendously under the leadership of Miss Rico Ornelas. But you know, and then a picture's worth 1,000 words. Look at those smiling faces at the CABE conference. So again, just great job.
Thank you. I also wanted to compliment them. Their recommendations to evaluate the staff and to track low-performing students. I think that's one good point they made. And another one is in the Title I, how's it measured in recent years, and is the plan working? That's an interesting question, and I'm so glad to see that they're not only out there doing this, but they're actually asking questions and asking, you know, important things that really need to be done. So thank you very much for that DLAC report. And now we'll go into public communication. D1, conduct a public hearing for the public to respond to initial proposals from the California School Employees Association, CSEA, Chapter 258, the exclusive representative of the Operations Support Services Bargaining Unit, Chapter 471, the exclusive representative of the Office Technical and Business Services Bargaining Unit, and Chapter 731, the exclusive representative of the Paraprofessional Bargaining Unit, and approve the initial proposals from the 3 CSEA bargaining units to the district. I will now open the public hearing. Are there any speakers?
I have no speakers. Does anyone wish to address the board?
Okay.
No speakers, sir.
No speakers? So, if I don't have any speakers, do I have a motion for the board agenda?
Could you close the hearing, please?
Oh, sorry. The hearing's now closed.
So just as a matter of clarification, all we're doing is accepting them as in receipt, but not to approve,
Okay.
because we still have to bargain. So if I think we might have made a typo in that, so
Okay.
apologize.
So, are we accepting? Do we need to vote on accepting it then? Okay.
So I'll make a motion to receive the initial proposals.
Second?
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. This is the point on the agenda where members of the public may address the board on any matter not on the agenda and have 3 minutes each to do so. The Board of Trustees cannot legally take action on or respond to matters not provided on the public agenda, but will refer the matter to the Superintendent's Office for review and report. Thank you for your cooperation.
Kathleen Cheers?
In reading a recent Voice of San Diego article, it substantiated the concerns raised by Ms. Adato and I when then interim Stover made recommendations to the board relative to personnel and the hiring of an in-house general counsel. All these decisions should have been done by a permanent superintendent, which leads me to a telecon we received from the press recently, reminding us of how often we spoke, raising concerns associated with then General Counsel Garcia, close relationship to the then Superintendent Gondra, and the large expenses Sweetwater was incurring. Previous councils had claimed they were saving us money. It gave the appearance we, the general public, were not the priority, but rather the relationships. Yet, council is paid by our tax dollars to represent and protect the best interests of the district, not any special interests. We were then sent several copies of tweets, pictures included, giving the appearance our general counsel is deeply embedded with certain members of the board, politicians, and the various associations general counsel is actually paid to negotiate with, which raises the question, who is serving the tax-paying voting public? Do we have a general counsel or do we have a labor council? Another article in The Voice was related to legal fees. Does having a general counsel actually save dollars? This is an issue Ms. Adato is currently researching. It was communicated to us our general counsel's expertise is as a labor negotiator, as indicated by her LinkedIn page and previous positions at San Diego Unified and other employers, versus general counsel. And we are now wondering how many general counsel issues are currently being referred out to other general counsels. While we need to be assured the board operates as individuals who are independent of special interests, it is imperative that this be true of any council representing us, the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich?
Good evening, Vice President Pike, Superintendent Zandy, members of the board. I wanted to thank you. At the end of last meeting, I gave a presentation. And sometimes, you know, you hit duds. And for some reason, that one seemed to resonate. And I was thinking, well, why did it resonate? And I think maybe I just need to talk to you more like I'm talking to you at Starbucks or something. And so I just want to tell you that it was a very positively received. I gathered all you were listening, which is really important. It sends a message to me to send to the Bond Oversight Committee that the board listen, because that's the biggest complaint that I get, frankly, is that I say, are you sure the board's listening to us? And I go, well, yeah, I think they are. Sometimes, more than, but, I said they really listen. It was a good thing. And I called Trustee Pike, or Trustee Hall at home right after the meeting and thanked her. And it seemed to resonate. So I think maybe I'll try that more. I think we're headed in the right direction. There's still that lingering baggage of the past that's always in the minds of these oversight committee members. And I'm here, the eyes and ears, every meeting, telling them what's good, bad, and ugly, and who listens and sometimes who doesn't, and those type of things. But what I wanted to float a trial balloon here is, and I have a different life also. It's probably not much of a life. As I get calls from I need help calls from other bond oversight committee members. And what's the 3 biggest complaints? And this is, I get, and what I think we should try to, as we move forward with this new bond measure, we ought to try to interject in the ballot language. And I'm just throwing this out as an idea that I have tonight that I'm going to go with the bond committee. One thing is, what works right now is the selection process is solid. It's treated like a job application. I think we ought to have some language in the ballot measure that says that. That shows that you value accountability. The second thing is the audit. Most of the audits around the state are absolute jokes. Ours isn't a joke, and it was our bond committee who led that process, where you have efficiency audits, not just the standard audits. So that's the second thing. Is we ought to be an expanded performance audit each year. That ought to have a collaboration between the board and the CBOC. And the final thing is and I know it's a tough one. Get a project list you're going to stick with. What do you got? What do you want to do as board? And don't leave it up to another board to change their mind in the future. Be pretty specific and have an oversight process. Will call them out if they don't. Because the final complaint is, you get the bond measure approved and they start spending on things that they never saw on the ballot. So those are the 3 things I think, as we move forward, we ought to consider. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and I like your shirt.
Price was right.
Stuart Payne.
Good evening. I am here again to speak about Olympians athletic program. And my question to the board and staff is, how is it that a coach that is well qualified and experienced, and not only qualified and experienced, was offered a head coaching job at Olympian High School, gets turned down to be an assistant coach at the same school for what is reportedly the reason is he coached at a rival school? That is one absolute nonsense. But the question is, how does that same coach end up coaching in the middle of the season at Eastlake High School? That's a rival school of Otay Ranch, of Olympian. How does that happen? You've got a track coach who, by the way, wanted to be here tonight to speak, but he's at a meeting, that had to file a complaint against the district on this issue. Now, as you guys know, this is an African-American coach. There's probably a hint of racism there somewhere, if not outright racism. But this coach is being required, I'm told, to do things that other coaches at Olympian aren't required to do, and other coaches in the district aren't required to do. And nobody seems to want to ask the right questions. And Ms. Cheers brought up the article that was in the paper this morning, and there's something important in that article, in that it cites a state law, and it talks about abusive conduct. And one of the things it lists under the description of abusive conduct is the gratuitous sabotage or undermining of a person's work performance. That's exactly what the leadership at Olympian High School is doing to this coach, because now he does not have a full complement of coaches for a reason that makes no sense. And when you go through the investigation, and I read the article this morning, you've got to ask the right questions. And if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers. This coach was offered the head cross-country job at Olympian High School with the current leadership in place. How is he now not qualified to be an assistant coach? Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Okay, if there's no further speakers, we'll have the formation and approval of the consent agenda. Clerk of the board, will you please read the items being pulled from the consent agenda?
The following items have been pulled: F5 by the public, H1 by staff and the public, K2 by Mr. Tarantino, M1 by Mr. Tarantino and the public, M2 by the public, N1 by Mr. Tarantino and the public, and O1 by the public.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Excuse me.
So the first item will be F5. I have one speaker, Kathleen Cheers.
I just have a question, Mr. Pike, if you could ask counsel. Were all of these handled by in-house counsel, sir? And when it says due process, bear with my ignorance, but does that mean for employees of the district? Thank you, sir.
No further speakers.
Okay. Ms. Corbucci?
Sorry, let's get this working. Settlement type, as indicated, due process is under special education law. When a case is brought forward, we bring those to the Office of Administrative Hearing when folks file under the IDEA. Without looking at them, I wouldn't be able to tell you whether those were handled in-house via a special services division through Mr. Lopez, or with an outside counsel, but generally speaking, those are done, special education law is done through outside counsel.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Okay. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion for approval.
Second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
H1?
H1, we have public speakers, but we have a staff presentation we'd like to give first.
Okay.
Dr. Fulcher.
Right. Thank you. About a month ago, we put on a pretty extensive forum, safety forum, in collaboration with the Chula Vista PD. We have a couple more forums scheduled that we'll talk about before this night is done. What we hope to do today is just to provide some context and foundation about the different ways in which we're keeping our staff and students safe in this district. We're not going to get into a lot of detail, but we're going to talk pretty generally about some things that are happening, not just at schools, but in classrooms and across the district as well. So part of the work we're doing certainly is driven by the mission and belief statements that all of you endorsed and approved not too long ago. But when you look at the belief statements, you can see there are 3 that should be highlighted and are very much related to the information we'll be providing tonight. The superintendent already read one of those. It's about believing in a welcoming community that's inclusive, equitable, and promotes positive academic, social, and emotional well-being. The next 2 about believing in relationships and collaboration as well as in the value of community voice and decision making are all important, because when you think about school safety, many times people conjure up images of suspensions, expulsions, what we need to do to make sure kids are behaving and doing what's expected of them. We think it's just as important to think about the type of relationships that our adult staff are building with our kids. We think the relationships that students establish and maintain with each other are also critical. And we think that when kids feel safe and when they feel they belong and welcome at a school, there's less likelihood of some type of misbehavior or inappropriate behavior occurring. So we also want to reiterate these belief statements and let you know that they serve as a foundational point for some of the information we'll be discussing tonight. You've heard about the LCAP goals, and they range from teaching and learning to coherent systems. We'll be focusing on ways in which we can create a safe and healthy learning environment for each student in our district. And those are the essential terms or the elements of LCAP Goal 2. Tonight we're going to focus primarily on how we go about building a positive climate, not just in schools, but again in our broader community. And there's some things to kind of keep in mind as we talk about these. We want to look at the type of relationships, as I mentioned earlier, that occur in our schools and in our classrooms. We want to talk a little bit about those environments as well that are created by not just the teachers, but the entire school team. Environment that's also created by the district office staff and employees that support those schools. We'll be looking also at some of the broader safety and security features that Mr. Jakowski will discuss, and again in a very general way real soon. And we would contend that when students feel safe, when they feel welcome in schools, when they feel engaged, when they develop those healthy relationships, it has an effect on all these things listed. We generally see achievement rates go up, attendance is better, there's less disciplinary issues to deal with, our graduation rates increase, our dropout rates decrease. Students have a stronger sense of hope, and they're more resilient when these relationships are established and built. And then it's also important to key on those critical social-emotional components that we think we've spent certainly a lot of time discussing and focusing on. We still have a lot to do in that area. But when we have those healthy climates and relationships, kids feel safe, and we also see improvements in each of these areas. We want to see some growth. We want to see increases. As many of you may recall, we had a very ambitious pursuit a few years ago. Superintendent had her 51st dates. I did an equity listening campaign, and one of the themes that we continued hearing is that we need more mental health supports, mental health services in this district. So about a year later, we established our own mental health team, and proud to introduce that person. And then you may also recall that this program, this department, was developed in partnership with San Diego County. Not the County Office of Ed, but San Diego County. And we have probably one of the most expert minds in the city working in our district on mental health issues. And Stacy Musso has been with us about 2 years. She's our program manager, and she'll take on the next part of the conversation. And before Stacy talks, when we look at safety and security, we're focusing on a few things to keep in mind. We're looking at the student. We're looking as well as what's happening in the classroom, the classroom to the school, and then the school to the district. So Stacy's going to start by talking about a few things we're doing to support our students.
Thank you, Dr. Fulcher. Good evening, board members. Sweetwater students have been receiving mental health supports for years. However, in the past, services were provided by contracted or community-based providers. So as Dr. Fulcher mentioned, recognizing the need and benefit of having mental health services directly for the school district, 1.5 years ago, starting the 2016-17 school year, we began hiring therapists internally as district employees. We currently have 13 therapists, including me, providing mental health services to students across the district, and 6 of those therapists are bilingual. Therapists can provide a range of services, including individual, group, family therapies, as well as case management, crisis intervention, and collateral services to help coordinate services with outside providers and other folks working with our students. We receive referrals for mental health services through school sites, often through the student success team meetings, but they can also come directly from counselors, administrators, teachers, nurses. We receive most of our referrals, though, however, from our community and family resource centers in the South Bay. They conduct a thorough assessment of families' needs and provide a range of resources and referrals for them. When mental health services are deemed the appropriate service, they send the referral to us to begin that treatment. We also take walk-in referrals of families that are seeking services independently. School sites supports are individualized and tiered based on students' needs. As therapists, we provide support directly to school sites by participating in their student success team meetings, which Ms. Picos will talk a little bit more about. In those multidisciplinary meetings, we discuss creative interventions that take the particular student's needs into account. This multidisciplinary team approach is helpful in identifying needs of students through several different lenses. Therapists can also help co-facilitate groups with school counselors in order to help build their capacity to support students. Our mental health team can provide trainings to school sites on many different topics, including anxiety, depression, trauma-informed care, risk assessments, and just general mental health overviews, just to mention a few. As a district this year, we have collectively focused on addressing student suicide prevention through updating our policies and procedures regarding suicide intervention and prevention. We also brought in a nationally renowned expert on suicide prevention to train our district staff. And we are partnering with a community agency to provide the evidence-based curriculum, Signs of Suicide, that focuses on understanding warning signs and targets students, parents, and staff. Actually, at our school safety event that happened on March 5th, a young lady came to me, a student at Montgomery Middle, came to me before the presentation and let me know that she had taken one of her friends to see the counselor that very day, who was expressing some suicidal content in a text message. And that little gal was actually evaluated by the counselors and hospitalized from that intervention of a student that day of the safety meeting. We also can maintain monthly contact with outside agencies that provide mental health services in order to assure that our students and families seeking services in the community are getting prompt and effective services. We interface with our program managers regularly through attending meetings with the County of San Diego that discuss current mental health trends, relevant changes in laws and regulations, and discuss current best practices in the state and county regarding student safety and well-being. Our goal as Sweetwater's mental health team is to provide a comprehensive service delivery model using all available resources to meet the safety, health, and well-being needs of each of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Stacy. We next have Ms. Sonia Picos, our Director of Student Services, to talk a little bit about some of the supports we're providing to classrooms and schools.
Hi, good evening. I think the joke has become, because in my last presentation I made a big hype how much I love my job, that I have the best job in the world. And I truly believe that. I think that having the opportunity to work with fellow educators, parents, community members, to always look for ways to better improve our supports and systems actually is just a blessing. As far as the work in student support services, we have truly been focusing on aligning our work to our LCAP goal number 2, which is to provide a safe and healthy environment to our students. So some of the ways that we have been putting this into action would be through our district's discipline plan, which I had an opportunity to share with you already. It was critical that we aligned our discipline practices district-wide because we saw what the disparity was from school to school. It's still a work in progress. Nevertheless, at least now we have a document we can rely on to ensure that practices are more systematic than they've been in the past. I think the important part there is that it follows a restorative philosophy framework where it's not as punitive and more one of giving students the opportunity to learn from the harm created and learn from their experience. Also, in addition to that is our intra-district transfers. We've been really honing in on what this practice and what this means, particularly when it comes to social adjustments. In the instance where students, there was an incident at the school site, and in the past, I think decisions have been made swiftly sometimes to move a student from one school to the other. Our efforts have been to truly pause that, and when necessary, absolutely support that, because I believe our assistant principals and principals have an incredible lens. Nevertheless, we want to make sure that we've done everything possible before making a move, because we know what transitions do in sometimes creating that educational gap for students. Another area of focus have been our student success teams, and this is a space and an opportunity for a multidisciplinary team of staff coming together to truly problem solve and create action plans to support students who may be in need, whether it be through academics, behavior, or attendance. So we heard from our school teams that it wasn't so much identifying what the issue was, it was then having resources available and what to do next. So our department created a resource guide that is now available to all staff that has all resources in one place, including referral forms, everything that may be needed, so that way that doesn't delay supports and services for students. And last but not least would be our professional development that is ongoing in all of the different areas. Right now, our goal is to expand more professional development to students. We see that there are a number of incidents that have to do with their use of social media, inappropriate boundaries. So we're creating some of that professional development and education actually for students, and some of it by students. So we're truly looking forward to that tonight, because the focus was safety. I can't say it enough how grateful we are to the law enforcement agencies that we work with, because the partnership is truly incredible. I can go on and on with the stories where, let it be 10, 11 o'clock at night, where we work together and we get police officers to our students' homes, and they have been able to prevent very serious situations. So we honor that partnership and really work hard in keeping that positive, because we see the product in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Picos. And I remarked at the community forum that we're probably the only district in the state, maybe even the country, that has an ex-Navy SEAL heading up our safety efforts. We're just happy to have John here. He's going to talk about safety from a district-wide perspective at this point. John.
Next slide, please.
Whoops.
Next.
Yeah, we'll get there. Sorry. I'm going, yeah, thank you.
So, good evening, board members. You've seen some of these slides here, but since we're really presenting how we communicate these ideas to the general public at the forums, I think they bear repeating, because they help show how we've drafted common language to really communicate some pretty complex ideas, to go from theory to practice to action. So, you'll notice that we use the term all hazards, meaning that we really have the responsibility to take care of preparation for natural disaster all the way to man-made problems. So we don't have the luxury of choosing which is our favorite. Like, oh, I really like earthquakes. Let's specialize on that. And then next slide, please. So you'll see this yin-yang symbol. It always adorns our materials because we like it to represent the symbiotic relationship between the physical safety and then all the other side that's equally important. And the ancient Chinese really had a good idea when they developed this symbol, because it's not just a white and a black piece, but inside the black there's a white and vice versa. So that, for example, if you're looking at something like infrastructure or facility design that you might see as more of a material, physical thing, it has to be conceived with how it's going to affect people's psyche, how it's going to affect how they feel in the location. So, and then vice versa. Next slide, please. Next. So all of our trainings and protocol are developed with the following and these kind of balancing acts in mind. So we don't want to just focus all our attention on responding to emergent situations, but rather try to move the ball to the left and do our very best to invest in prevention and mitigation. Mitigation meaning if you can't prevent it, then you want to lessen the potential severity, like wearing a helmet when you're riding your bike, so if you fall, you don't hurt your head. And then we have to balance a spectrum of risks. We can't just focus on those really scary things that hardly ever happen. We have to make sure we're training people on also to respond to things that happen fairly routinely or maybe once a month, so that we don't fumble the basic stuff. So we look at that spectrum of frequency and severity that are mostly inversely proportional. And then another balancing act is taking it from the organizational play, the John Madden football play, down to the individual responder. So we want the schools to be able to, if the principal says, blue 22, everybody knows what to do. But then if the teacher's out there in their classroom and they see, oh my God, blue cookie monster, what do I do? And I'm the first person on the scene, then they feel empowered to start the ball in motion. Next slide. So this whole system view is a helpful way to orient yourself in any conversation that you have with teachers or staff members or the public, because we look at the down the left side, those previous categories I mentioned, like the FEMA chronology of prevention, mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery. And then aligned down the columns would be these 5 critical areas of infrastructure, so like our new radio systems or the Raptor visitor screening systems, the stuff, maybe getting help designing a new access control or fencing system with like Janaea's help and that team. Then the whole ephemeral positive climate, that thing you can't see but it's everywhere, and it's really critical in an education setting, as Dr. Fulcher has started to systematize. Our procedures can be everything from just a access control protocol to an active shooter response to a incident action plan following a high intensity incident where we go out and support a school, like doing a relocation and a reunification. So it's the whole thing. To follow on with what Sonia said, our partners, we have 4, our district's so large, we have law enforcement partnerships with San Diego County Sheriff, National City PD, San Diego PD, and then the largest, Chula PD, and they're literally helping us last night, and it literally was 11 o'clock. And the partners also include the federal, so all major counties have a law enforcement coordination center that fuses federal and local information sharing. So there's some things that we need the FBI's help on sometimes. So our partners aren't just local. And then community. So this Saturday it was a real pleasure to present to the families and work the DLAC, ELAC kind of groups or PTSAs. Okay, next slide, please. So this is one of my favorites because it shows how, although there are state mandates per ed code, they're not very stringent. So a lot of what we're doing here is ahead of mandates. So I'm really, proud of this piece because we're not just checking off boxes. We're trying to really go for serious capacity building. There's probably too many things to cover here, but you'll see things, major investments in options-based protocol, where our district leads the county, if not a broader scope, in having protocol that once the leadership and staff are trained, they have like options. They don't just do a fixed response that may, that's generic and might not apply to the situation. It takes more training and it takes a lot of trust, but they've really been going well, especially this year with a really increased op tempo. We've started with Dr. Aguirre's help us start a disaster preparedness work group that's interdisciplinary. It's not just the business services side of the house, but it even has like curriculum where we're working on plans, continuity of learning should we have to move a school after a fire, so we can so kids aren't out of school for 2 months like they were after the La Brea fires. The SATs, APs, tests, they don't care. They're still going to be on that date. And then you'll see there aren't a lot of training requirements per the ed code, but we really put a lot of investment in training. That's where some of our best return on investment is, and it's fun. Get everybody running around and have a balanced day. So I think I'll just stop right here because I think we're at about this is just the agenda for our last training, and we're literally doing that on the day. Well, Parkland came in between our Tuesday and Thursday, so we're just doing what we normally do, and then that happened. So this is the team that, next slide please. So you'll see this is the team where it's a required training, and these teams take that training back to their school sites in little pre-made modules. They also, like at Olympian last week, they'll actually invite us out sometimes to run more extensive stuff. So it's a good place to start.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And
thank you.
Of course, we are certainly prepared to answer any questions or hear any of the board member comments. I think there are a couple of speakers, so.
Would you like to take the speakers first?
Go ahead.
Kathleen Shears.
I'd like to thank you, Dr. Fulcher, for the opportunity to review the information beforehand. This was an excellent report. I appreciate the direction from the board, from Dr. Janney to Dr. Fulcher, to go forward with this, as this is a major concern of the community due to what we're seeing everywhere. It is noted that this district was the first district to do it, because after the meeting at Chula High, all of a sudden every district around was doing it. So it's nice to see that we're taking a leadership role. I'm bouncing all over here. It's important to note that the role that many of the teachers, counselors, psychologists, even cafeteria workers play should be commended with regards to their interrelationships with our children. Having said that, I respectfully ask Dr. Fulcher to continue to focus on bullying and its detrimental effects. The majority of school shootings are done due to bullying. And I would also like to challenge our student, Mr. Irizarry, in maybe coming up with some ways that the ASB can think of something with regards to every year doing something with the ASB and getting the students actually involved. Students sometimes lose track of what bullying, the effects of bullying. I have a special needs adult daughter who suffered through this, and I also have a granddaughter who had a bit of an issue. But I also know that at several of the schools, they've had students that got together. I don't know if it was led by the ASB or the district or the school leadership, where they focused on this and they partnered with different kids, maybe partnered with special ed kids or whatever. So just something to communicate the importance of not being left out. I also have a young man who lives in my cul-de-sac, and he's different. And kids know that. Kids know that quicker than we do. And unfortunately, he's being bullied. And I've had to talk to him and his dad about it. But I just know the power of students. Once again, Dr. Fulcher, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich.
Good evening again. Thank you for this. That was a great presentation, article to focus obviously on something that's in the news. I was actually invited to attend a conference on school safety. It's where the La Mesa Spring Valley School District about a week ago. I wanted to kind of relay a couple ideas I had after hearing that. One is, maybe it's embedded in some of the presentation, is the importance of monitoring social media and having law enforcement have a system of reporting things that are not right. And I'm just gathered that there isn't a consistent. I was told at the meeting it was actually Crime Stoppers was actually the entity that is to call, and I don't know. It just seemed a little odd that would be it. But what I was hearing is the social media monitoring reporting aspect was a critical part of their thought process in terms of the school safety. Admittedly, it was the K through 8 level. The second thing, these are sort of random thoughts, is that, and I assume there is some kind of consistent set of law enforcement protocols. In this case, they were focusing on an active shooting situation, that they all talk to each other, they respond in the same way and communicate the same way, the same radio frequency was important. I assume that is going on here. The third thing in terms of the physical environment is if there are some improvements that need to be made to campuses, and Dr. Geary probably knows this, that you make one improvement and triggers all, and it revolves ADA, it triggers ADA improvements through the entire school and balloons the cost. So that's an issue. The final thing, and this is one from a strategy standpoint, I'm getting out of my swimming lane here, but thinking going forward on bond measures, and school safety should be, I mean, if there's nothing that shouldn't be most important, that ought to be it. We saw it many years ago with the fire alarms they were in atrocious shape in the district. If you had school safety improvements identified for each school as a part of your project list, that's a positive. That's going to be viewed positively. And it's the right thing to do. It's a win-win situation. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Stuart Payne.
Good evening. I originally wasn't going to speak on this item, but I decided to. One thing I want to point out, and I pointed this out several years ago, but I can't remember if you guys were in place or others. Fire drills. The state requires you to do fire drills by a certain date. I think it's October 10th or October 15th or something like that. Well, you guys start school in July. And so if you don't do a fire drill like they did at Olympia in the 4 years my daughter was there until October, you have all of those freshmen that have no clue what to do or where to go during an emergency. So if you have an emergency in August or September, you're kind of creating a recipe for disaster. So that's my first point, doing fire drills much earlier than October. The other thing, and this is something that the track coach at Olympian is asking me to relay to you. I think he may have had conversations with somebody about this. When you start talking about student safety and active shooters and fire drills, you need to include the walk-on coaches in that conversation, because a lot of times your walk-on coaches are on campus supervising students getting ready to take transportation or getting dressed or whatever, and if some traumatic event breaks out, they need to know what the plan is for students as well. And again, that's not my idea. That's the track coach's idea from Olympian. Bullying. You know, as we read in the paper this morning, I know you guys read that article, we've got to stop our administrators from bullying folks. Your track coach at Olympian is being bullied. You've got other coaches that are being bullied, and you have staff that are being bullied. So while we're stopping the bullying, student on student bullying, we need to stop the professionals from bullying other professionals as well, and I hope that you would include that in this plan as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Okay, no further speakers. Does anybody have any comments? Go ahead. Ms. Ray.
First of all, I'd like to thank all those who presented for a really informative presentation. I really like the progress that the district has made in ensuring school safety. It's very reassuring to hear as a student that we are one of the leaders in the San Diego area as far as in doing this, especially with all that's going on in the news recently. On to address some certain things. So one thing that I've been interested in, like one idea that I wanted to float out there maybe, was at my old elementary school, which was a small charter school called, I believe it was Leonardo da Vinci, they used to have a day where we would actually do fire drills on school buses. So where in the case of a school bus, where in case the bus tips over, it crashes, or there's some other emergency, we would know what to do, where the exits are, and how to get out of the bus safely. You know, how to access the, say, the fire extinguisher or the trauma kit. And this is something that I don't know about the logistics of this. I imagine it might be difficult, but if we could potentially have that on a safety day, I think it would go a really long way, especially with the amount of students that ride the bus and don't necessarily know where the emergency exits are, how to open the emergency door or the emergency roof hatch. And something like that in the case of a potential tragedy could really save a lot of lives. Next thing I wanted to talk about is, and I'm sorry if I didn't miss this if I missed a bit of this in the presentation. I understand the district has made big strides in including LGBT youth within our district and being more inclusive. But I still see, and it starts in middle school and continues throughout high school, a lot of homophobia and especially transphobia amongst the students in this district. And it's really heartbreaking to see that even in 2018, as accepting as a society may be, it's still a problem. So maybe one things that we can include are possibly having more LGBT inclusion events at the middle school level, because that's especially where this kind of divisiveness and this prejudice begins, at the middle school level. And as for bullying, I do take bullying very seriously. I was personally bullied throughout elementary and middle school. It sucked, and it's a terrible experience that could leave you really insecure as a person. And while I do think the district has made strides in bullying, I think it's still important to, I would definitely, Ms. Cheers, thank you for giving me that suggestion to definitely talk with the ASB about it. I think that's a really good idea to kind of, get the message out. It's still something that exists at the high school level, maybe a bit less than middle school, but it's definitely something that, while we've taken good strides, it's something that we can continue to do. But overall, those are just some ideas floating out to continue to strive towards the goal of a safe and inclusive district. And I'd like to thank those who presented and for all the wonderful work they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Dr. Fulcher, thank you very much. John, I appreciate you being here. It's very nice to have somebody that has your experience and training in our district. So thank you.
President?
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Vice
sorry.
President?
Go ahead.
Mike, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that fine presentation. It was very informative, and I really like the work that the team's doing. And I know I understand that you invite some of the other surrounding districts to participate in some of the active shooter stuff and training. I think that's very important, so they could get experience with that. Maybe that's just really good for them to see that, and hopefully their districts will pick up on that. I know that I got some positive feedback from my wife about that. She attended that, got a lot out of it. And to what Mr. Marinovich said, I was going to comment the same thing, that it'd be very, very good for us, and it's a very good idea to have the school safety security prominent. I'm sure Dr. Aguirre has that figured out already in the ballot language. That's a really, really good idea. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Tarantino.
Again, piggyback on my colleagues' comments. Thank you for the excellent report and for being proactive in having your sights set on what could be coming down in the future. So I appreciate that. I would first of all request that maybe the board receive a copy of the resource guide that is available to school sites, so that if we get calls in terms of, well, this is happening to my son or daughter, can we, maybe we can definitely tell them to call the appropriate individual, but then say, and you might want to ask about these kinds of things. So I think that would be helpful. I appreciate Mr. Payne's comments about the walk-on coaches receiving training. Also, the fire drills, if there is a lag time between the start of school in July and October, then I do think that it is important that individuals, especially for the freshmen, unless those kinds of things are given at freshman orientation, and I don't know whether they are or they aren't, but I do think that it's important that all of the students have an idea of what to do at the time. And in addition, I think what I'd like to ask, is there any kind of training or information given to our substitutes? Because we can't always guarantee that the teacher of record is going to be on campus when we have an incident. And I don't know, I know that each school has specific plans, but I don't know if that would be something that we should be concerned with, especially in terms of the staging areas. If a substitute is on campus and doesn't know where a staging area is, should there be an emergency then, or even where to go during the fire drill. And I know that there is a lot of information in the substitute packets that are given on campus, but I don't know exactly if those kinds of things are included in that. In terms of our restorative frameworks, when a decision is made, like say for instance the intra-district transfers, is there any kind of communication to the teachers of that student as to what was done and the reason why the intra-district transfer was not initiated? Because I think if there isn't that communication, then the perception is, well, the student comes back and gives their spin on, well, nothing happened to me, and so then that gets around the school, and then the teachers get disillusioned, and so I was just wondering if there's any kind of communication that follows a decision in terms of communicating it to the teachers of that student. And I don't know that there is or there isn't.
We certainly encourage communication to take place, and just have to make one point of clarification. I know you mentioned restorative practices. We're using restorative practices in this district as a method for improving relationships, not to discipline students. That's certainly one of the side benefits of our restorative movement. But it's more about building positive relationships and healthy communities in schools, not about discipline. Although the offshoot is that disciplinary interventions are less punitive. But we want to get to a point where kids feel comfortable in schools, and that we give them an opportunity to help repair some of those issues or harm that's been created in a way that's more mature, more adult-like, more professional, and we're teaching them a valuable lesson. So the type of communication you're referencing is certainly encouraged, and we talk with our admin teams about the information that needs to be shared, but we also don't want to stigmatize students either. And if I could just take a few more minutes to address some other statements that were made. We have worked very closely with Chula Vista Elementary School District and them putting out and presenting their social media app, which does identify and monitor certain things that are being communicated across the community. So they're working diligently. We have partnered with them, and we can continue to do what we can to make sure that the communication being exchanged from students to students, students to adults, and adults to students is safe, appropriate, and not threatening to any person or any kind of physical space.
Dr. Fulcher, you meant Chula Vista PD, right?
Chula Vista PD,
yeah.
Yes.
I think you might have said elementary school.
Oh,
district.
okay. If I did, I apologize. It should be Chula Vista
Yeah.
PD. Okay. And there is a protocol that is followed. Of course, there's some sensitivities around how much to share and provide. We have some things that we certainly have worked with all of our law enforcement agencies around, but sharing a lot of detail will provide a blueprint for some people who may want to do and create some harm. So there is a protocol that we have in place, and we work with our partners to develop. In terms of the physical environment, I think is a great question. We have equity walks that you've heard about that we conduct, and we just recently began inviting John to the equity walks, equity and learning walks. His role, while we're going from classroom to classroom, is to canvass and interview staff around the school. He's trying to find any safety weaknesses at that site, and we'll report those to the principal and share those with the team once we start reporting out. So we're looking at that. In terms of the walk-on coaches, another great question. The other question I've asked Mr. Hines and others is, let's say a crisis occurs while there is a sporting event. What do we do? We're in the process of developing plans that will be shared and with all of you, of course, but also with our various schools, and we're working on some type of training, or the training for our walk-on coaches as well. That's being developed, and I will assure you that once we have that in place, we'll come back and share that information with you. The resource guide, Mr. Tarantino, is available right now on the Student Services website, but we'll make sure to forward a copy of that document to all board members as well. I think I covered most of the statements that were raised, with the exception of bullying and our LGBTQ youth. Our 50-50 Day that's upcoming, of course, is an effort to make sure we provide the kind of attention to gender equity, transgender students as well as we can. We also have fairly regular meetings, I would say monthly, and sometimes more cases twice a month, with our GSAs and student reps to talk about ways in which we can improve the support we're providing those students. And the issue of bullying is one that we will continue to focus on. We had a brief discussion with Hanover, who does the research, some of our research for the district. They identified that as a continuing question and concern. We're going to work with Hanover and work with our team to develop better ways to make sure all kids feel safe at school, and that there's no bullying at all that exists, cyberbullying or actual physical bullying. So thanks for all the questions, comments, and guidance. It's something we take seriously, and we'll have additional conversations about all of these matters. Yes, thanks, Sonia. We have planned two things. It's a training that will be around cyber education. It's open for anyone in the community who's interested. And we'll also be talking about CSEC, which is the commercial and sexual exploitation of children. So we're going to be looking at human trafficking as well as cyber education or cyberbullying. And that happens on, when again? Yes, and we have experts in both those areas coming to speak on the topics. You're welcome to join us, and we're hoping to have a full house.
Yeah, one more question, Vice President. Could you please, Dr. Fulcher, remind me again, talk about whatever restorative practice or circles or we work on here at the district? Could you go over that again? And does that always include, no matter what it is, that it's the principal is involved in it, to the teachers, to whomever, administrators from bottom to top to bottom, so it's just not, with just teachers only, that sort of thing, because I think it's important for the buy-in for everybody, wherever the site is, that if their leadership is owning it, that really, goes a long ways for everybody to own it.
Yeah, there's been some reference to articles. About a week ago, Voice of San Diego put out an article around restorative practices. And as a matter of fact, they had called and asked for our advice. Restorative practices, as I mentioned earlier, is more about developing relationships than about discipline. We have not allowed student or schools to move forward and claim to be a restorative school unless there has been acceptance and buy-in and a certain amount of training from the administration to the teachers. So teachers have gone to training on their own, and that's great, and they may be doing something that's related to restorative practices in their classroom, but that school isn't a restorative school. We have 4 pilots right now in the district, and we're expanding by 2 for the next school year. It takes on average of about 3 or 4 years before a school was truly considered restorative. And the schools we've identified have made a great deal of progress, but their principals, their assistant principals, their deans, their teachers have been trained and continue receiving training on a monthly basis. Those that haven't been trained, those who have had maybe inconsistent training efforts at their site, in many cases could potentially, like the article suggested, do more harm than good. So we prevent or we discourage schools from moving forward and claim that they're a restorative site if they haven't had the right type of training, and if we're not offering the right type of support, which we have provided by the way of TOSAs, or teachers on special assignment, as well as some of the pilot schools, all the pilot schools having a restorative specialist who has 2 periods a day to help staff, help principals work on increasing the provision of supports around restorative methods.
That is great news. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Tarantino.
I want to thank you for that clarification, Dr. Fulcher, because I think that, well, at least from the feedback that I get, the developing relationships aspect of our restorative practices gets lost, and it seems to take on a disciplinary thing. So when I get phone calls, I'll be sure to tell them that the focus is on developing relationships. So I appreciate that. If you're going to look at bullying, I think there's a new phenomena going on, particularly at a couple schools that are in my area, and that is bullying by the adults, cyberbullying by adults who are either associated to the school by committees or by booster clubs or whatever. And I don't know how to get a handle on that, but I know that it is happening, and there are some victims of that, adults as well as students. And I think it's, again, I don't know if it's just particular to my area or if that's happening throughout the district, but I've been made aware of it on a couple of campuses. So I don't know what you do about it, but
well, if and thanks for sharing that. We'll definitely monitor and do what we can to support. And when we talk about developing relationships, we're not just focusing on students. That's a big part of the work we do, but we also want to make sure that all adults and community stakeholders are included in these discussions as well. We can't solve some of these issues in isolation. We have to include our communities, our adults, our parents, and you're right, in some cases we probably should spend more time with the parents and community stakeholders than we do our students.
Thank you again, all of you. Nice job.
Thank you. Okay, so that leaves us to K2.
Yeah, I just had a question about, in terms of the donations, Chelsea Wong, the organizational planners that she donates to a number of schools. I think last year she donated the planners to Otay Ranch High School. Is this more of an in-kind, the $53,000, is that more of an in-kind donation, or is it actually she gives the $53,000 and our schools produce the planners? How does that work?
So it's actual planners.
Okay.
So they have various programs like buy one, get one. So throughout the years, when other places or it's not just schools that the planners are used for, but people who purchase them then provides them opportunity, provide planners to other places.
Okay. I just saw this figure and I thought, wow.
And you are correct. Other schools have asked and other schools have participated and been recipients of the planners over the last few years. They started in 2012, is my understanding. Alumni from our district and all from UCLA.
Nice.
Well, thank you.
Any other
That's
questions? Comments? Do we need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Can we have a motion for this?
I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. M1?
M1, I have some speakers. Kathleen Cheers?
Yes, Vice President Pike. If you could ask Dr. Aguirre, I'm not understanding adjustment in the survey. Do students still play handball? I mean, there's so much information that's not included in this, so I don't know if it relates to the handball court. I'm talking about page 1 of 2. Second thing is, did we spend money on the soil for inspections that we're not going to put, or we're going to remove the sod? I'm sure we paid for the sod and the irrigation. And what type of exterior fitness equipment are we speaking of? And is it tolerant to the outside? I know it sounds like a stupid question, but I've learned. How were the conduits and cables broken? Were they broken beforehand? Did the project manager not know that? Moving on to page 2 of 2. Was there an actual architect on this project? That's the first question. Number 1, modify cabinetry to allow for proper installation clearances around appliances. They didn't do that to begin with. Number 2, remove and replace countertop damage during sink installation. Why are we paying for that? Number 3, add dedicated electrical circuit for new washer and dryer. I'm a dumb old woman and I do know about that. You should have that. Was it not identified? Number 5, the wall demolition for the placement of the new exhaust duct work. I'm interested as why that wasn't identified. I just don't understand why we're paying for the errors on this particular project. And with regards to student Irizarry's comment, this is a funny, so I'm going to let you warn, regarding bus drivers knowing what's on the bus. If they have bus driver Gilly, they know where that stuff is. I can attest to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich?
Just a quick comment on the M1 as it relates to the National City Middle School, and I contacted Dr. Aguirre today regarding the field restoration project, and I understand it's safety, but I think I'm going to need a little more information. But the school has had a lot of money spent on it, and I know as we move forward, this may be one of those legacy project situations that are carrying forward now to the current board. It's a lot of money at this school, which it was in need, but just wanted to point that out. I guess I'm giving you more to follow on the National City Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers. It was also pulled by Mr. Tarantino.
I had the exact same question about the Palomar project that Mrs. Cheers had. It seems like these would be a contractor mistake. Isn't there some kind of adage where you measure twice, cut once? Apparently, it seems like, at least on the surface, that didn't happen. So I guess my question is, at what point is it their responsibility to fix things that are messed up as opposed to our responsibility?
Dr. Geary, you got all those questions written down? Because there's a few of them.
I'll
Okay.
give it a whirl, and if I miss a couple, I'm sure I'll be reminded of them.
Thank you.
And for some, I'll ask Ms. Quirk to come out and comment. So regarding the National City Middle, kind of from a broader perspective, the reason we're working on that project is because the campus currently, or before this project, did not have the ability to use this area for PE, so they were actually having to cross the street, and we believe they created a hazard that we were trying to mitigate. And again, that's due to previous projects. Regarding item number 2, removing the sod and irrigation to install new fixtures and fitness equipment, that's actually a decrease to the contract where we, the department did remove the particular item of sod and irrigation in order to install fitness equipment. In terms of the particular fitness equipment, I don't have that information. I don't know if we have that, but in terms of kind of the I'll ask Ms. Quirk to address that when she comes up, in terms of the ability to withstand kind of all weather conditions. Then on the Palomar Culinary Class Project, what I can say is we had to work fairly closely with that contractor because it was a fairly small firm. This was, we want to say, probably one of their first contracts with government, so we had to work with them fairly closely. They were the lowest bid, so we had to work through them on that. That project occurred during the winter break, and so part of the reason for us moving forward is it was a time is of the essence kind of situation where we wanted to complete the project before the students would come back. So that caused us to move and get some of these things done, and then revisit some of these conversations with the contractor, because we had some of the same concerns, but again, with our focus on getting the project completed, that's why we went ahead and made some of these, approved some of these modifications. I'll ask Ms. Quirk to come up if I missed some of the specifics, but if you can kind of address some of the questions. Janae?
Good evening, thank you. So going back to National City really fast, and with regards to the fitness equipment, it is actually all-weather outdoor fitness equipment specifically designed for the capacity in which it'll be used. And then going to Palomar, Dr. Aguirre already touched that we did have a very unique contractor on hand. But for item number 1, that was a case where due to the existing program that's there, it is kind of residential in nature, and that's how the architect designed the appliances for that program. And then once they went to go purchase some staff and went to go use their FF&E to go purchase the appliances, it was actually determined that it would be better to have commercial grade, and so they upgraded to commercial grade, and there was a little bit of a depth difference. So that's where you see the 1400. And then with regard to item number 2, that was definitely trying to push a project and hoping the contractor could get where he needed to be, and really pushing hard on that contractor to get the work done over the break, and staff made a decision it didn't go well, and so we had to backtrack. We did repurpose some of those supplies. They were handed to maintenance and operations to be able to repurpose as best needed for elsewhere, and then they regrouped, and that's what you're seeing. And so staff was feeling as though due to all of those conditions, it would be something we should just absorb and move forward to help that contractor get across the finish line. So
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or concerns? No? If not, I'll make a motion. Or I want a motion.
Entertain.
Sure. I'll second that motion, and thank you for those details, team.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura? Yes. Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. M2?
I have 2 speakers. Kathleen Cheers.
So tonight you're being asked to approve $39,405 for Nino and More for testing and inspection. I handed to you a document that shows that we had paid for that previously. You'll remember Little Diversified Architecture, Bonita Vista, Hilltop Football Field. We'd already paid for things. Now, I have worked on this for approximately 14 hours this weekend, and I'm not finished. I found the need to go back to the year 2013 because my concern is I'm wondering how many change orders for Nino and More there are on this project. So my question is, why are we paying the money again? The $39,000, because if you look at the date of the information I gave you. Additionally, last month, you paid Nino and More $3,705. Now, why this is concerning is that I think it was Channel 10, Channel 8, one of them did an article or story on Hilltop. They showed a year ago, they showed a picture of the field, and then they showed now. Nothing had been done. They've already done the borings, they've already done all of this work to test the soil. I haven't heard of an earthquake at Hilltop High School, so I'm thinking the soil nothing's changed. So, you know, and I'm just letting, you know, I'm being very respectful, Dr. Geary, but I'm just letting you know I'm headed into 2014. I am going through every item there is, and I will be researching this. And once again, I would like to say there are other companies out there other than Nino and More. And I'm sure you realize I get up here quite often and talk about change orders and additions to projects. I think we need to start looking at that. And with all due respect to Dr. Geary, Ms. Quirk, I understand that things happen. And when you look at the Palomar project, it's not much money. But when you add up all those not much monies, they add to something. So hopefully this firm will never be hired again. I don't care what their price is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich.
Good evening for the final time. And Vice President Pike, you haven't screwed up once yet so far. We're impressed. But you still have an opportunity. Anyway, seriously, you know, on the Hilltop High School, I'm not going to pile on that one. You know, what's the point? It's Mrs. Cheers has done the research, obviously, and I'm sure all of you have been up there long enough. When she does the research, there's something behind it. My comment is, you know, and I haven't talked much to Dr. Geary about it, and, you know, he, by the way, just as a quick aside, you know, he has a really difficult job. I'm telling you, my boss at the county, he didn't tell me to say, basically had his job, but he didn't have all the transportation, the buses, which is add on top of that. Plus, we didn't have to deal with a CVOC when we're a royal pain in the butt, too. So, you know, he's got a difficult job, and I get that. But there are, you know, we just, God, I almost used the F-bomb, for God's sake. You know, we've got to get our act together and being thorough on things, you know, at the very start, and get the mentality here. We're going to be thorough. We're going to have multiple reviews on everything that goes out. We're going to have council sign off on most everything to make sure it's lead tight, so we don't have this kind of stuff. You know, the committee. This is the kind of stuff that'll bite you in the rear end on a bond measure if people start chipping away at this stuff. So it's not inconsequential that we better get our act together on getting these projects out on the street in the right way. Man, it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. And I know Dr. Geary is trying his best, but it's the way we've always done it mentality that has hurt this as we move forward. And I know the district is trying, and the hardest thing to move in a bureaucracy is not the people sitting up here, it's the people doing the work that have been used to a certain way of doing things. We have to get out of that. We just have to get out of it. It's frustrating when you look at this project. But I know we're going to do it. I know we're going to do it, and there's a number of changes that are coming forward, and I have full confidence Dr. Geary is making the right decisions. But it's the culture of how we do things that has to change. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Okay. Dr. Geary.
Yes, Trustee Pike. I'll ask Mr. Bradley to come up and describe the rationale behind that item for Nino and Moore.
Vice President Pike, members of the board, excuse me, Dr. Janney. On the Nino and Moore items, an item that was brought to the board for approval last month for, I believe it was $3,750, was specifically for the testing of soil that is stockpiled at the site. You may be aware that we have roughly 200,000 cubic yards of material there that need to be exported. And we needed to test that material to make sure it's not contaminated and meets with all the requirements of the Department of Toxic Substance Control. So that was that issue. We have now, unfortunately, increased the duration of the project. There are areas of the project that will require rework, which means that Nino and Moore will have to perform compaction testing on areas that may have already been tested. But I think the larger component of this is that we have added scope. There is a ramp that's required for this project to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. That ramp was going to be bid separately. When we entered into our amendment with the San Diego County Office of Education, we felt it would be prudent and most efficient to roll that ramp in, so that's entirely new scope. In addition, there are some new structures that have been added. One of the things we did when we transitioned from the contractor that we terminated to the new contractor was do a thorough review of the drawings to make sure that they were 100% comprehensive and that we would end up with a facility that was fully comparable to other facilities in the district. So there are some buildings such as a ticket booth that require foundation certification and compaction testing of footings and so forth that were not originally in the scope. So I think the Cliff's note is more time, some testing to make sure dirt we have to export is not contaminated, and that we did add scope to the project.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
N1.
Pull, yes. I have 1 speaker, Nick Marinovich.
Not here.
Oh, no speakers. Pulled by Mr. Tarantino.
Mr. Tarantino.
This was my last pull. Hey, I think I did pretty good tonight.
Let us be the judge. No, I'm just
Oh. Thank you, Vice President Mike, for that comment. I want to say I was impressed with the RFQ and the responses of Clifford Moss. Although my first thought was, is this any relation to Moss Adams? but it isn't. No, I took Mrs. Cheers's the way that she operates and Googled it, and so there isn't. So. But I was very impressed with what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and I think in the fact that they are going to work with True North. I was going to say True West, but that's Kanye West and one of the Kardashians' kids. So I'm not. Yeah, I am directionally challenged. So, so I am glad that they're going to work in concert with our polling company that we've hired. I guess my question is, I guess it's on the last page, and it talks about money. Well, somewhere along there. Oh yes, it's on the very last page. It says for the campaign, And it says that state law requires advocacy campaigns to be funded and driven by independent community campaign committees. Thus, we must contract separately with an independent campaign committee for the 88-day election window. And they're suggesting that an amount of $275,000 to $300,000 be raised. And my question is, how does that work? And again, I'll give a disclaimer. I'm hypersensitive on this issue. But how do we ensure that pressure is not put on our employees to either contribute or to quote unquote volunteer if they should not want to?
Mr. Geary. Dr. Geary, excuse me.
Thank you, Trustee Pike. Excellent questions. I might say we've been kind of thinking about that. So the first part is this particular contract is for this group to advise the district, not for the campaign piece. I just want to be real clear on that. So we cannot engage in advocacy. This is to put information together around the condition of our facilities or whatnot. So that's kind of the first part. The second part being, in terms of a committee, I think what they were trying to do in this language is be real clear, actually, that in terms of advocacy and campaign, that's a separate process from the district. So in essence, kind of what you're trying to get to. Subsequent to this action, what we are working to put together is a training for trustees and for our staff in terms of what's appropriate and what's not. Kind of this is what you can do. You can communicate about, look at our facilities, these are the needs, but we can't cross that line into kind of what you're talking about, requiring people to volunteer. We can't. Those are the types of things that we cannot do. So what we're subsequent to this, we're putting some information together to be able to disseminate it in terms of to make sure we support all of our staff, our trustees, and others in the community who may want more information around what we can and cannot do. So again, that's kind of the next step once we have the full team together to communicate out what we can and cannot do from a district perspective. And then once the board adopts a resolution, if and when the board adopts a resolution, that goes to a separate process, which is the 88-day window for campaigning.
And just like in campaigns where there's a parallel campaign, we cannot have any contact with that campaign at all, correct? In terms of, like, if this committee wages a parallel well, they're going to, it sounds like they're going to do the whole campaign, that we're not going to have any part of it.
So I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, what we're going to be asking this firm to do is from now through the point at which the board would adopt a resolution to send to the registrar of voters. At that point, we would cease activity with this firm, and then an independent committee that runs the campaign, they would make a decision whether they work with this communication consultant or they want to work with a separate communication consultant. Our window with this particular firm is through that point which the board would adopt the resolution to make sure there's a clean break of activities, and then at that point a separate campaign committee would take over that part of the work.
And we have no say in who that independent campaign committee is, correct?
Well,
how is it? I guess I don't understand how it's even selected.
So I think that's what we're trying to do by bringing the team that includes our financial advisor, that includes this communication consultant, and as well as bond counsel to come forth and provide that information. Because again, what we're trying to do is have a clear as possible break. And some questions I think are not as, we haven't necessarily developed them at this point. Right now we're focused on getting a team that could help us with communication, but we can definitely have them research those questions.
Okay. I'll ask when we have the workshop. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
01?
Yes, I have one speaker, Kathleen Cheers.
So, Vice President Pike, I just would like Dr. Geary to clarify something. When you look at the list, I only have the first page here because the amount of money I'm spending on paper and ink is astronomical. But when I look at Poway and Oceanside, am I interpreting it correctly that we have their buses come down here and help out our transportation system? That's the first question. The second, and this isn't really a question, this is just an observation that has been shared with me by numerous schools, and that is the amount of money we are spending on charter buses. Has anybody looked into the amount of money we are spending on charter buses? And I would just like to bring that to the board's attention because it is massive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Dr. Aguirre.
Yes, I'm happy to address the non-facility question. So in this particular item, this is in essence what amounts to a kind of a mutual aid type resolution. So in case at some point we would like to ask for help from some of our neighboring districts, and it's pretty much, I think, a comprehensive list of all the districts within our county. It's facilitated by the County Office of Education, and it happens every 3 years. So to be able to call on districts like Chula Vista or San Isidro or any other district in the county, this is a resolution that would allow us to ask for that.
In case of emergency, if we needed it.
In case something were to happen, correct. Secondly, in terms of the actual cost, I can work with Ms. Michael. For this particular item, it's not information that I had put together. We have had initial conversations, and it's our understanding it's pretty expensive. So, but again, I don't want to put a figure out, and we haven't vetted that pretty thoroughly.
I just have a question. Why would we use charter buses? Is it because ours are too busy? Or I don't know. I'm just asking.
So that's correct. First, schools make the request of our transportation department, and if at some point if we exhaust our resources, there's no more buses or no more drivers, we do have the ability to go out to ask charters to provide that service. We have actually had some instances recently within the past month where actually even the charter companies themselves were out of resources. They didn't have buses or they didn't have drivers. So it's a continuous kind of challenge that we're working on, and it's not necessarily limited to our district. We're noticing in our region.
Is that primary for athletic type things? Okay.
Generally speaking, it's primarily for athletics, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Solis?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay. Now we come to board communications. Mr. Solis.
All right. Wanted to say thank you to Dr. Luz Elena Perez for this weekend's event, the Parent Symposium. It was wonderful, and Mr. Villaseñor was a shot in the arm, so gave us a little energy to keep doing what we're doing. And also I wanted to thank Dr. Aguirre and if you can help me, Ron Malone, yes, for walking me through Granger and seeing the facilities there. So that was great. Also got a chance to go to Sweetwater High, and Mr. Crayshaw and Miss Gavin gave me a tour there and all the things that are happening there. And as we were talking about safety, I was there during the lunch time, and I mean it's amazing how with 2,700 students and such a small campus, how calm and peaceful it seemed. The kids were great, and it seems like they want to be there, and they're doing a great job there. So I thought that was fantastic. So that was really neat. And I also got a chance to go to Chula Vista High with Miss Peralta. And my wife ended up coming with us to that one, and we walked around. And she's doing a lot of good things there. The one thing that she did ask was for a higher fence around, and to get rid of some of those fences that are inside, because it does seem kind of like a cage. So I was just wondering what the purpose for some of those fences were. I'm sure there was ideas or reasons for them there prior, but now it just seems like they're just there. And but they're doing a great job there. So wonderful tours and facilities checks. So it was great. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segura.
So I was able to attend that parent symposium, and that was really, like Mr. Solis said, a really shot in the arm. And Mr. Villaseñor gave a really inspirational keynote speech, and I'm sure everybody was there really enjoyed it. And I know I did, and saw the parents, buying into it and really being encouraged and getting fired up. So that was really good. And I actually went to his breakout session. That was really good. That was really well done as well. And I didn't get to go to the one that I wanted to, that Dr. Janney, or actually I think it was Anna Marie. Somebody mentioned the ADHD, and I got to look for that information, but I could have used that a long time ago in my life, and but there was really a really good, first one that I guess Dr. Janney, we hadn't had one in quite a while, and it was a good kickoff, and I thought it was really good, and I'm glad to see as many board members there as possible, all of us, including Nick Solis, and I really enjoyed that. I've gone to several softball games, so I get to see a lot of the different campuses as I watch my daughter play sports, the many sports that she plays, and I had really never been to Olympic High School. That's really a really nice campus. I went to their softball field, which is all the way in the back, and sat in a chair under the tree, eating fruit dishes from a great little vendor there, and it was just great. I had a really good time watching the girls play and learn softball. It's really interesting and fun to watch these athletes learn a game, right, as you're watching them play softball and trying to just get them going to run the right way and that sort of thing. Really, really fun just to see that, and that's what's so genuine about it. And that's really the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tarantino.
Yeah, I'd like to also piggyback on the parent symposium and again thank Dr. Luz Elena Perez and her team for coordinating that. And I went to a couple of sessions, and first of all, I'd like to say I'd like to commend the planning committee for the use of our own in-district talent, because I went to a session on turning failure into success by Deborah Morris and Teresa. Well, I thought it was Wake Up, but it's Walk Up. And again, good ideas in terms of how we frame what we tell students and our own kids in terms of preparing them for failure. And it's not about the end product. This was something that was interesting. It's not about the end product. It's about the effort that's expended in getting to the end product that we should focus on in our communications with students and our own kids. And usually we tend to say, oh, good job, you're really smart at this, and that's not bad, but we should also focus on the fact that we should identify their process of getting to that end product and commend them for sticking to it, which I guess builds resiliency. And it was very interesting. I also went to a session on hashtag love, love, share the love. And it was by a group, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And very excellent presentation in terms of not only the statistics of how many people are impacted by this condition, but also what kind of services are available. And most of the services are free through this organization. And I asked them if they've ever attended our college and career fairs or our work expos, and they said no. And I asked them if they would like to be invited, and they said yes. So I have their cards, and I will give them to Dr. Janney. But I do think that we should have, if they're willing to come, I think that we should have that information available to parents and for students. Very good menu of services, and they deal with children from pre-K all the way up to age 21, 24. So it's good. It was good. I also learned that if there is an emergency with someone who has some kind of mental illness, that when you call 911, you should ask for a PERT, P-E-R-T, certified either officer or team to come out, because they are trained in handling people specifically with those kinds of issues, and I didn't know that that was available, and so that was another aha for me. And again, just information like that I think is important, and we should get it out as much as we can. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Usually a PERT person goes along on every shift, so if there's an issue, they call that unit to go with the PERT to that problem. But anyways, Thank you very much. Dr. Janney, anything? Okay. Finally, I'd like to piggyback on my colleagues. The symposium was excellent. But you know what I really appreciated? Because I didn't get to stay there too long. I had to go watch my grandson play Little League. I promised him. But all of our staff is there. Everybody in this room is there. And all the people are getting to know our staff. And so it's part of that process. And I think it's really a great thing that they know them on their first name. They know who they are. It's just really nice. I love this guest speaker. I'm going to get some books and get it to my father-in-law because he loves that type of storyline. And he didn't pull any punches. If you were there, you heard. But anyways, it was very good. Thank you very much. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about was Hilltop's football field. Thank you very much. There's action in the bullpen. I've seen it myself. There are actually people working out there diligently. And Mrs. Cheers, I know what you're talking about because when I first took over this, I couldn't believe they cost money to check on dirt that just got dug up and put over in the corner. Now they got to check on it. But you know, there's so many testing procedures and processes that we common folks don't even think about, and that's what the problem is. It's just there's tremendous amount of that taking place that we don't even think about, you know. But anyways, I'm hoping that everything works well and those kids can get off the cement and quit getting shin splints, and we can honestly have a normal lifestyle for those athletes. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you. I did?
Yeah, you did.
Nice.
By 5 minutes.